Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, and today we are joined by a reoccurring guest, a friend of the show, and I know all of you are really excited about this one because you're probably like me. You get to the point in a given Giants season, and now it's been what, 6 of the last 8 years they've been 2-7 or worse through the first 9 games, that you start thinking about the future. You start thinking about the draft. You start thinking about roster building and how we can get out of this mess once and for all and become a team like the Commanders, who have so much hope right now and so much joy. And I like bringing them up because, as we'll talk about in a little bit, our guest today, David Syversten of Ourlads, and does some content for Big Blue Interactive as well, had Jaden Daniels as his number one quarterback in this class. And I just want to give him credit for that. It's too early to take victory laps.
Way too early.
He'll tell you that himself. But the kid looks awesome out there. The kid looks special. And not many people gave him or put him in the running for QB1, I don't think, in this class. So I thought that was early from you and interesting. And we're going to get your analysis on other quarterbacks in the 2025 class coming up. But before we do that, we will talk Giants. And before we do any of that, I want to turn it over to you guys. How are you both doing today? Cy, what's going on, my man?
I'm doing great, as good as I can do, knowing that we are watching another 2-7 football team here. This is the time of year. The weather starts to change. The leaves are falling. The Giants are 2-7, just like those are automatics every year, where we really do amp up the draft, the scouting work, because there's real film to watch every single week, and there's a lot now. And I changed up my process a little bit this year in regard to the quarterbacks, which I'm excited to share. And I really feel like I'm kind of ahead of where I was or where I am usually at this point in the season. So I'm excited to talk about it with you guys.
Can't wait to talk about that. Can't wait to talk about that, Cy. And as the leaves die, so do the Giants' hope every year. That's kind of how it is. This is football sports, and the leaves are always dying. That says a lot about the state of the New York Giants. But yeah, let's just get right into it. But Dan, how are you doing, bro? We haven't even asked you.
I'm doing well, my friends. Look, I look at it like this. I enjoy talking with Cy so much, and I enjoy this podcast so much, and the ones that we do that are like this, because just to be honest with the fans, and they know this, they've listened to our pod for a while, Nick, I don't care too much about wins in a 2-7 season. I'm happy for the Giants. I'm happy for the players. I'm happy for their families. And I'm happy for the coaches for every win they get from this point on. But what I want is to get a team that can give us wins when it matters, that can put us, make us, have it be fun again to watch this team and have there be hope around the team. And that's what the draft is all about. And that's what the roster building process is all about. So that's actually where I wanted to start before we get into draft. I think a week or two ago, Cy, I saw a tweet of yours that said, for you, it's a non-negotiable when it comes to the general manager. You are willing to consider all options at head coach. So you didn't make any proclamation there. But for you, it's a non-negotiable. Joe Schoen stays through this offseason and through into obviously the draft season and free agency. Can you just explain a little bit about why that's so you have such a strong stance on that?
Yeah, because when you inherit a situation like Joe Schoen did with such a rough salary cap situation, a depleted roster, a really shaky quarterback situation, which we have to be honest about this, none of us really knew what the best solution was. I mean, the worst thing that happened was Daniel Jones led this team to a playoff win in 2022 because it created, after they declined that fifth-year option, it created this like, crap, what do we do? We can't let this guy walk and be left with Tyrod Taylor. We can't draft anyone that year. And they really were between a rock and a hard place at that time. But to circle back from that big picture macro level perspective, GMs in general, in my opinion, they always deserve a minimum of 4 years. I think 5 years should be the number because it takes that much longer to really see a sustainable impact from that side. Coaching, you can make a much quicker difference with scheme and personnel usage and game management decisions. All that stuff can impact a team right away, and let alone 2-3 years. But a front office, especially with draft picks, right? These guys take 3 years to really see what we have here. We've seen up and down. At the beginning of this year, we were very happy with Deontay Banks. Right now, we're asking, should this guy even be on a starter anymore? And that's just a 1-year window right there. So I do believe that a front office, unless they're just in complete shambles, which this front office is not complete shambles, and I know we don't want to say positive things about this franchise, it's not a bad roster. There are bad components to it that prevent wins from getting on the board, but there is more talent on this roster now than there were 3-4 years ago. So I think that he has his status as the GM of the Giants set in stone through the 2025 season at least.
I'd like to press you a little bit on that one, actually.
Yeah.
It's something I agree with, by the way,
Let's do it.
with what you just said, but I don't think a lot of fans agree with it. And I want
Yeah.
you to maybe go into a little bit more detail, and we can kind of offshoot this, Nick, if you want to touch up and follow up on it, and myself as well. Because I agree that this roster is a lot more talented than it was when he inherited it. I agree that some of the things he's done to take strides on this roster, specifically the offensive line, which played on tape very well last week against Washington, despite not having a left tackle that is really passable for most teams, and the pass rush. Among a few other things, there's talent at wide receiver position, things like that. There's some young talent to work with at all positions, I feel like, for the most part. So for you, what has been the key factor and why you believe this roster has really taken a talent upgrade over the years that Joe Schoen's been here?
I would say if you rewind to pre-Joe Schoen, okay, I know that Dave Gettleman brought in Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Saquon Barkley, right? And those were not bad draft picks, right? You could talk about value. We don't want to go down that path. Those are good players not brought in by Joe Schoen. But the difference between this roster and that roster is if the Giants imploded and every single player became a free agent, okay, I would say this roster right now, 40 of those guys are getting picked up right away. Back in 2020, 2021, prior to Shane getting here, I think that number was 10 to 15. I really think it was that bad. And the biggest Achilles heel to this team was the offensive line. And what they did this offseason, despite the fact that their first round pick from 2 years ago has not seen the field yet, right? And that he has been a bust, and we can kill Joe Schoen for that. But I'll tell you what, there's not a soul out there that saw this coming. So I don't want to crush him for that, but this offensive line is a lot better. They have more talent at wide receiver. They have some really young, encouraging talent at tight end and running back in the defensive backfield. They have a real four-man pass rush when Kayvon Thibodeau is healthy. So you couldn't say any of that 3-4 years ago. And the black eye for Joe Schoen is Evan Neal and Daniel Jones, and those are big. Those are big misses, and it might be Deontay Banks. We might not know to the end of this year, but by no means has he been perfect. No GM is. Every GM swings and misses at some point. But I do think that I feel much more secure with the fact that they have a plan. They just don't have the quarterback yet, and we don't know if they have the head coach yet.
What would you say, though? Because I know a lot of our listeners are listening right now, and they would also throw Cordell Flott, Josh Azudu, and possibly even at this point, which I believe it is too early to tell, but we have not received the returns that we believe we would receive from Jalen Hyatt, who can hardly see the field. Now, is that a huge indictment of Jalen Hyatt, or is that more of a applause for Darius Slayton? I think it's probably the latter, more of an applause for Darius Slayton. But what would you say to address those issues?
That he hasn't been perfect. He has made mistakes. I would throw all those guys into the mistakes here. And I would challenge fans of other teams to spend the night, if you want to. I don't want to go look at some other GMs and go on Pro Football Reference. It actually won't take you a night. It'll take you under an hour. And just go through every draft from every single team from every single year. And you are going to see misses all over the league. The success rate in this league, and I think I'm not a big analytics guy. You guys know that. I got crushed for saying something that on Twitter a couple of days ago as well. But
I see that.
I use analytics for information, and I like information, and I do like trends and just knowing the trend of successful draft picks rounds 1 through 3 is about 30 to 40%.
Wow.
So if you're getting 5 out of the 10 picks, meaning you're getting 5 wrong, you're above average.
Right.
So I think you have to be a little careful with labeling guys failures, A, so early on, but B, letting that overshadow some of the success. I mean, Tyrone Tracy might be one of the best draft picks we've seen. It's very early. We can't celebrate it yet, but there are positive draft picks that he has made. But the quarterback contract and Evan Neal and Deontay Banks could swing this opinion that I have at this time next year. Absolutely. That's why I think that 5-year window is important. We need more time to truly evaluate what he's doing.
I 100% agree with that. And I want to touch on Banks, not to deviate from this conversation, because I think it's a necessary point to make. How much of this Deontay Banks fiasco is an indictment of his skill set and a referendum on his skill set, or something that's internally happening with Deontay Banks due to the failures going on with the 2024 New York Giants. Because this is still somebody that I know has that athletic ability. I think the technique has significantly suffered. I think Jerome Henderson needs to really get to work and prove that he is an above average to good defensive backs coach by reclaiming Deontay Banks and bringing him back to what he used to be. But I wanted to get your opinion on Deontay Banks right now, because I still know that there's a good football player in there. It's just on the Giants coaching staff to tap into it.
Yeah, there's a good football player. There's an elite level athlete at a position that is full of elite level athletes. And he's top 1% of the top 1%. And he had good tape in college. Yep. I remember like yesterday watching his tape against Marvin Harrison. It was good. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. It was good enough. Here's the thing about Deontay Banks that I said coming out of Maryland, who I had a late first, early second round grade on him, which so it doesn't mean it was a major reach, but I did have Joey Porter slightly ahead of him. He was so raw at Maryland. He was more inexperienced from a snap perspective and a target perspective by a mile of all the other guys that were on the table for being the top cornerbacks in that class. I'm not anti-drafting someone like that. Example, last year, Marius Mims, the lack of experience he had at tackle, it's just like you have to know that you're taking the risk. You know, you're going up there and going to try to Giancarlo Stanton the fastball. You're either going to swing and hit at 500 feet or you are going to miss. And if you can accept that kind of risk, now the message or the situation in which you make a draft pick like that, to me, is not ideal for a team that is trying to get out of the basement. Right. If you have a fallback option at cornerback, if you have an elite pass rush, if you have a lot of support, meaning, hey, this guy swings and misses, we still have Aaron Judge behind him coming up.
Right.
Like, the Giants didn't have that. And that's the one area where you can question, but is it Deontay Banks' fault? Is it Jerome Henderson? That's where I think we have to be humble enough to know that we don't have all of the facts, but there are significant technique issues. And that hustle problem is where I hate that stuff. I'm a traditional in this. That can make me cross you off a list quicker than most people. That really bothered me. And I was hoping he would respond in a better way, and he hasn't.
And I love the points you made both about, one, how people just need to take some more perspective on these draft. It's very hard to hit in the draft, and there's a lot more busts than people realize. But two, the problem I have, which is like, it goes back to the Evan Neal evaluation. A lot of this that people don't realize, now we can't say for certainty for any of this, it's a little bit speculative on our part, but it's something that Nick and I have discussed a lot in the last week, which is how much do these guys want it? Like, how much do they want to be? I can be the best corner in the NFL, or I can be the best tackle. And because of that, I'm going to put in this and this amount of work, or I'm going to do this on tape, or I'm going to bust my ass on this snap and put that extra effort in that you do see some of these players playing with. And as I've told Nick, like when we went over the tape this week with Micah McFadden, who had a really good hustle play, we're like, it's a 5th round pick, right? He wasn't the first round capital. Like, he wasn't that guy. Sometimes it feels to me like some of the earlier guys were always told they're that guy, and it's a little bit less of that drive. I don't know though. This is speculative. I want to make
it. I mean, this is what scouting is, Dan. I mean, we will watch the tape. And we'll read stuff. Maybe I get into a conversation or two, get some inside information, Adam Schefter it, right? I get very few of that. And when I do, I put thought into that. Like, there's stuff about Shedeur Sanders that I know that will impact my evaluation of him for the draft. But that's where the scouts have to be very good. Sometimes people label a good scout as I can watch film and project from there. A good scout gets every little piece of information about the person, because that often determines success at the next level. You're all a freak. You're all great athletes. You're all the best. You've all been the best. But that's not good enough once you're in the league. You have to be humble enough to go back and focus on inches of your footwork and all the little keys. You need to be addicted to film, right? And some guys will not relate to that. I mean, I'll get bashed for saying this right now, saying I'm an old man, but that's what I believe in take football out of it. If the second you start getting content about anything you do, you're going to get passed. That is inevitable. And that's where I think Deontay Banks, from my perspective, where I don't have all the facts, I think that's what happened. He's also in a whole new defensive scheme. Yeah. I think Wink Martindale was a huge reason why the Giants drafted Deontay Banks. And that's another danger of constantly revolving door coaches, is that certain players don't fit certain schemes.
Yeah, you'd rather have Joey Porter in this scheme right now, without a doubt in anyone's mind. It's just obvious for anyone who watches the game and looks at the X's and O's. But from the film standpoint, like, when you're looking through all of this stuff, and it's interesting to me, Cy, because you can look at each pick and you could go by, which one did he get right? Which one did he get wrong? But I do like the idea, and something you brought up a few minutes ago, that it's almost like he came in, he was working with the previous scouts to some degree that he inherited from Gettleman. He's got his process kind of ironed out over the years. And it does feel like this is his best draft class with by far this current draft class. It's still early to say. That's the key thing. I love what you say. Don't even analyze a draft class until 3 years in. And I wish people could adhere to that, but they don't. And we make our declarations early. But it'll be interesting to see, because all of the players we've talked about are like, I tell this to Nick. I talk about this with Nick all the time. We don't get second chances at these picks. You don't get a do-over. It's your one asset for the year, and that's it. And the reason the Giants are in the mess they're in right now is because they've missed on so many of these assets. But I do want to talk a little bit about, before we get to the draft prospects, I want to talk a little bit about the quarterback decision, something you mentioned earlier, Cy. So I don't knock Schoen as much for re-signing Daniel Jones after that season. I just think they were in a tough spot. They won a playoff game. But my big issue going into this year was, you saw the tape from last year and you've seen the tape from his career. And it all starts with something you said in your scouting report. To me, it all starts something you said in your scouting report immediately on Jones. He has slow eyes. When you have slow eyes at the quarterback position and you can't process information and you can't throw with anticipation, it affects the entire pass game. Everyone's talking about the drops. There are a lot of drops. You know what else leads to drops? Late balls and balls with bad ball placement. And when the ball's not out early, the entire passing game suffers. It stays out of rhythm. So that's been my assessment of this position and this passing game.
Point.
But where do you stand with this position as we move to the draft and the offseason? Because it's going to be interesting to see what direction they go. And where do you stand with what they currently have on the roster? Do you see any QB1, QB2s on the roster? Did you think, like me, it was a mistake to not bring in real competition this offseason?
Yeah, I was pretty adamant that the Giants should have drafted JJ McCarthy, even though Malik Neighbors is special. It's a great consolation prize. Trust me, that dude, he's a dude. And so it's not something you're upset about. And I had a higher grade on JJ McCarthy than most people. So I can also understand saying, hey, we don't see the value there. Let's go get that superstar wide receiver, the alpha. But my fear was this upcoming draft class might not present that next quarterback option. And now, like, what are you going to do? You can't march him back out there next year. Even if he ends the season strong, you can't do it. And you're going to have to take, I think it's a $28 million loss. I think it's right around the high 20s. Instead of paying him 45. So it's a net gain of, 15 to 17 mil a year, which is, and then he's off the books from there on out. You could build the roster with a rookie contract, all that good stuff. But to me, I did not advocate for bringing in a Sam Darnold. Like that, there was nothing that I really saw in free agency that mattered. It was all about the draft. And I do question, was it a pride thing with the Giants front office? Like, did they just say like, hey, we said no, then we say yes. Now we're saying no again, all in a matter of 3 years. And that to ownership, if I was an owner and I was looking down on these guys that can't really make the call at quarterback, that would worry me more than anything. It would worry me more than fans not showing up to games. It would be like, do I have someone in the room that can really find the next quarterback and develop them? So the coaching staff, I'm 90% in on they're probably going to be safe, but I do think what transpires over the next 2 months will matter. But this is another really high level, difficult decision. If you want to draft a quarterback next year, are you going to let this staff develop that player? And if you do, they probably deserve another 2 years with him. That to me, I'm a big continuity guy, chemistry guy. Schoen and Dable, they have the relationship. I would roll the dice with this coaching staff, but they also need to know they need to improve as well. But I think you cut Jones loose at the end of the year, no question about it. And that presents the question that I get asked all the time on Twitter. Do you bench him so he doesn't get hurt and bring up that clause in his contract that guarantees his money? Do you just throw DeVito and Locke out there and basically mail it in for the rest of the season and probably improve your draft position?
With that decision too, do you think ownership will look at Joe Schoen and Brian Dable and whatever decision they make, and they'll factor that into their decision to keep either Brian Dable or I think Joe Schoen is safe, but Brian Dable specifically? Because the Brian Dable thing, first I want you to answer that, but this Brian Dable thing, it could implode a la a 2021 Joe Judge, depending on how this finishes. And it's not like we haven't seen instances from this team last year and this year that would suggest that it could implode. This could be a ticking time bomb for Brian Dable if he can't contain this locker room.
I mean, he hasn't proven that he can do this. He has not proven he can be a head coach. He has not proven he can win without Josh Allen, the best quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
Yes, I said it, guys. But,
I like that thing.
But those are big factors. Like he's the unproven one. He's one of the most unproven guys in the building from a head coach perspective. I know he won Coach of the Year in 2022, but there was a lot that went into those wins that year, and I don't want to take it away from him, but to circle back to, should this guy have, the autonomy, the no matter what, hey, you're coming back next year. No, I don't think that's the case. I hate revolving the door around again, but if a guy isn't the guy, you have to cut him loose. I'm a business owner as well. Like that comes into my eyes at some points with my business. If long-term, it's not going to be the move, then you got to cut them loose. If you still think there's a glimmer of hope, you can open that door. But it's funny how now that the Giants are really struggling, and we do see some coaching shortcomings with these guys, you start to get bothered by some little things. I had a conversation with a Giants fan the other day talking about on Hard Knocks when Jaden Daniels came in. Everyone's proper. Daboll's sitting back with his feet on the table, like looking like he's chilling with his bros in his basement, in his man cave. Like that to me is something that kind of sets a tone. And I could tell Brian Daboll, there's something about he wants to be the player's coach. Like he really wants to be their buddy. And that's a new age culture, society thing. But I don't think it belongs in the NFL. And I think we're starting to see a big reason why Miami is struggling beyond the Tua injury. I think there's something there that a football coach needs to be a football coach. I think that's still alive and well.
Yeah, the Harbaughs are certainly football coaches, and they win a lot of games.
Tomlin,
Tomlin, they win a lot of games.
Players love them too.
Yeah,
and the players end up loving them. I think that's the key.
Winning cures everything.
Do you want to know why the players? Exactly. I was just going to say, because they're winning games.
Yeah.
The only real culture is a winning culture. That is the most true thing about the NFL, which scares me, because as they lose all these games, the Giants, that's when it becomes, does it fester? Does the culture kind of really rot to a point where you can't really go forward with this guy? But it's also scary because, like you said, if they do draft a quarterback, what are you going to do if they lose a lot of games? You fire him, the coach, and now you're inheriting a new GM, and coach inherits a quarterback they didn't even draft. It's a nightmare scenario to even consider for this franchise.
I think Nick and I are getting stressed out listening to this.
It's a stressful time for Giants fans.
Quarterback hell. That's why they call it quarterback hell.
I'm so emotional on every pod and so angry because I'm so frustrated by where we've come to. Like, this is really feels, it's not rock bottom because it can get worse, but it feels like the worst it's felt for me as a fan and an analyst of this team. Now everything can change fast. Jaden Daniels changed the whole damn feel for that Washington team, and I know they brought in Peters and they've done some good.
They got a new owner. They had
they got a new owner, but as I said on the last pod, they got a new owner. They did all this other stuff, but if Jaden Daniels wasn't sitting on the board at 2 overall, we wouldn't be talking about any of this about the Commanders right now. They'd have 2 or 3 wins again, and they'd be in their early stages of that rebuild. That's what a QB can do for a team. But let's talk, because now we're headed toward the draft.
One more thing before the draft, I wanted to get Cy's opinion on.
Okay.
And that's just Evan Neal. I know we're on the outside of the building. We don't exactly know what is going on, but we both, and Dan, we all studied Evan Neal's tape, and we saw some of those shortcomings, but it does seem like it's been like a 1 percentile return on what it could have been, like a 0th percentile return. Like, this is the rock bottom return of what Evan Neal is, taking him 7th overall. Can you just glean any insight on what the hell is going on? Is this injury related? Is it the kid? Is this his first time trying to overcome this type of adversity with his football career? What are your insights on why this guy can't see the field right now? And we're picking Chris Hubbard off the practice squad from the 49ers to start.
My guess is he had initial struggles, and psychologically you can even tell just him and his normal pass sets, traditional pass sets with nothing fancy happening in front of him. He was second guessing himself over and over. Like, his footwork is inconsistent. His hand placement was inconsistent, and the margins in the NFL are just so much smaller and tighter than they are in college that you don't have time. You don't have inches to make up for when you're off by a little bit. And it's like lessons that you try to teach little kids about sports. The second you hesitate, you are starting to lose. And there's a lot of hesitation in this game. The only positive tape that we see consistently from Neal is in the run game, because there isn't as much thinking. There isn't as much waiting. There's like, go attack, get your hands on your guy, use your power, use your size. And I'm not going to say he's a dominant run blocker, but by no means was he a negative there. I actually had a lot of positive grades from him last year in the run game. So I think that's where it's at. the injury does not help and you suffer multiple lower body injuries to a guy that already has balance shortcomings, that's going to cause even more issues. But to me, Nick, my opinion, I think it had much more to do with his psychological response to adversity.
Yep.
And the coaches couldn't get through to him, or he has a mental block there. And that's why there probably is I'm surprised he's not even an option right now. You know, they signed someone, a 34-year-old off the San Francisco practice squad to play a position he hasn't played in years. And because they don't trust Evan Neal to play right tackle. I bet Illuminar could play left tackle at a good enough level, but they don't want Evan Neal. It's crazy. They don't want Evan Neal at right tackle more than they don't want Hubbard at left tackle. That's the truth.
Even left tackle for Evan Neal. He played at Alabama.
Yeah, he did.
And maybe part of the issue was that he was on the right side. These tackles always talk about how difficult it is to transition side to side, but they're like, we want to work him at right tackle. Yeah. Everything I've seen on this, to me, and this is again just pure speculation, says that there's something weird going on behind the scenes with Evan Neal and the Giants. That's the only thing that makes any sense for playing a guy like Chris Hubbard over him right now. Because otherwise, you got your 7th overall pick and you're putting him in there immediately when an injury like this happens to Andrew Thomas. So obviously that's the situation the Giants just have to deal with right now. They have a bunch of guys going through confidence issues. A bunch of them are first-round picks. It's not a good situation for us. Hopefully something can change on that front, but we only have you for a little bit of time, and it is funny because I don't mind. I'm happy we just spent 25 minutes talking Russell stuff. I could go on more though. I could spend another 30-40 minutes talking Russell with you, especially because you're like us. You're watching all the tapes. I would love to just get your film thoughts, but we don't have time for any of that, and we're not going to have time for a lot of the positions I wanted to tackle in the draft, in my opinion. So I want to spend as much time as we can on the one that's most important to fans. So we'll do another show at some point down the line for sure, if you're game for it. But for now, let's talk focused for the rest of the show on just one position, and it's the position for the New York Giants heading into the 2025 NFL Draft, and it's the quarterback position. So maybe let's start here. What is your overall thoughts of this quarterback class versus the last quarterback class?
Yes, I just want to open the door to the process in which I changed, because at this time last year, if you said, where's J.J. McCarthy going to go? And I said, round 2. I remember saying that in the fall. He's a round 2 quarterback, day 2 quarterback. Some people kept him there. I didn't really watch all of his film until January, when I knew that he was coming out. I actually thought there was a possibility him and Harbaugh would go back to Michigan for another year, but then they win the national championship. That whole scandal issue, I was like, all right, they're both getting out of there. But I feel I changed my process in that every week I'm watching every drop back from these top 5 or 6 quarterbacks, so that I'm fully up to date. I don't need to watch anything for them. So the guys that I have right now, the top 5, 6 guys, I've watched every drop back this year. And that's a little it has eaten some evaluation time out of other positions, but I can say that I am fully up to speed on where my quarterbacks are stacked and where I think. So the overall feel of this class is really, you had Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, and Drake May. I had them as hey, I'm picking these guys top 10 no matter where I'm in the draft, because I think they can be dudes. They can lead your team to a Super Bowl and be that guy that's going to be there for 15 years. Then you had Bo Nix and Michael Penix, who are probably more projecting to be late 1st, early 2nd round picks, that if you really want to and take the chance, you can draft them in round 1. And that's that's what happened, right? I have 3 guys in this class that I think are pretty much in that Bo Nix, Michael Penix tier, if not a little bit better. But I don't have anyone right now in the tier of those top 4 guys that I had.
Yeah.
And it's not a Debbie Downer. We have plenty of time. There's still some of the most important tape is still to come over these next 2 months. Sure. So a lot can change. And a lot of it is we haven't seen them in certain situations yet, or we haven't seen them respond to adversity. Cam Ward hasn't played a good defense yet. All these things, there's still things that need to be done that they could make their way into that tier. I don't see any of these guys being in the elite tier. The guys that I would say, hey, he's going to be an all-pro when he gets to the league. We had Jaden Daniels there. I don't see that level, but that's okay. That doesn't mean you should lose all hope. Not everyone you draft is going to project to be that level. So I think the good news is there's multiple guys that I think will grade out as first-round quarterbacks. And the Giants, I would be shocked if they don't use their first-round pick on one of these guys.
I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. And you can have a similar experience. To get this new customer offer from Mint Mobile and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That's mintmobile.com/BBB. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BBB. That's 3 Bs. $45 payment upfront required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Hey, Giants fans, we've teamed up with Buck Foston to give away exclusive free apparel from hats to premium sweatshirts and hoodies. It's easy to enter. Just follow them on Instagram @_Buck Foston or sign up for the newsletter at buckfoston.com. Next, DM them our 20% discount code BLUE20 on Instagram or through their website's chatbot, and you're entered in the giveaway drawing. You can participate every week and boost your chances by tagging friends and liking posts. 3 winners are picked at random each week. It's simple, free, and a great way to score apparel from Buck Foston. You must reside in the United States to enter. Terms and conditions apply.
So Dan and I, we talk a lot about arm talent. And I want to just ask you, of the quarterbacks that you've evaluated, every snap of these top quarterbacks coming into the 2025 draft, who has the best overall arm talent?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have all these good traits on my sheet right here, and who has the best arm talent? So when you say arm talent, the best combination of power, accuracy, and touch, right?
Yes.
They don't need the most powerful arm, but they need to be accurate in touch. If you told me who has the best arm talent, I'm probably going to say it's Cam Ward.
Okay.
I do think that he's got the best arm talent. There's a lot I don't like about his game that we can get into, but that combination of being able to throw off platform, throw downfield while you're rolling left, put it on a line when you need to, throw it across the field when you need to in a tight window. That's it. But there are some negatives to his game. I do think I have literally written under Shedeur Sanders right now that he has the most underrated arm talent.
Okay.
That he really does. He can make all these NFL throws at a high level, and he's probably one of the more accurate guys in this class.
So I was going to ask you, I love how you broke it down and you put it into buckets, and we don't have maybe a Jaden Daniels bucket. We may not even have that next bucket, but as far as the potential for a Penix or Nix, who a lot of Giants fans did want them to explore those quarterbacks in the last class, who were those 3 guys that you have at the top right there in that top bucket?
So it's Nussmeier from LSU, Cam Ward from Miami, and Jalen Milroe from Alabama are my 3 guys that I think could end up being, hey, yes, I'll take this guy in the top 10. Nussmeier he's had some good and bad, but I do want to put out there, he's the least experienced quarterback in the class, and he's under 10 career starts so far, which some people are going to say he's got to go back to school. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does. One thing I want to challenge on that, though, in terms of it doesn't matter as much. His tape is up here and everyone is down here off the screen. All right, where am I? Up here. Okay. In terms of anticipation and understanding what defenses are doing. When you watch his all-22 tape from the end zone angle, he makes throws into traffic where the wide receiver is not even in the frame when the ball leaves his hand. And by the time the ball reaches the receiver, he just all of a sudden gets there. It's over and over. It's every week. Dan, I think I sent you one on X against UCLA.
You knew I love that one. I love anticipatory throwers.
Dude, there's 30 of those throws. They're really high level. They don't make the highlight reel, and they're not all touchdowns. But he's also one of the most aggressive downfield passers. That guy just slings it down the field. His father is a longtime NFL coach, quarterback coach, and offensive coordinator. That means something to me that would replace some of the experience. There's nothing that substitutes game experience. That is the most important thing, to see that these guys are put into situations, and he has been a little turnover prone. He takes a lot of risks. And to me, that's okay if you are constantly creating explosive plays. And he shined when Jaden Daniels sat out the bowl game last year. Like he's done a lot on tape that a lot of these guys have not even touched yet. There's just the inexperience factor and the fact that he is a little turnover prone at this point.
And talk to us a little bit about Cam Ward.
Yeah, Cam Ward, he's the most productive by far. I mean, he's having a Heisman caliber season, and he's got a ton of experience at 3 different programs. He's leveled up twice. He started at Incarnate Word. Then he goes to Washington State. Now he's at Miami, and he's getting better at every stop he levels up to. Because Pac-12, in my opinion, you don't really face a ton of good defenses there. So now that it's in ACC, Cam Ward still has to play a little bit against some better defenses for me to really cement him in there. But he's done well at every level in every system he's ever been. I love his mantra. I love his ethos. I'm a big interview watcher. I'll watch these guys talk on camera after losses, especially. He's a dude that I would like to be around. The problem with him, the margin between his good and bad is enormous. And that especially in New York with a short-tempered fan base, that's an issue. And he misses layups and free throws every week. And I put that on Twitter last week, and there's people that love Cam Ward out there. To me, I'm comparing Cam Ward's to JV Caleb Williams, meaning his highlight reel is fun to watch. He makes things happen on his own. He evades pressure, great contact balance. He'll make any throw from every angle. So if you're an off-platform guy, you're going to like Cam Ward. But if you watch every throw, there's so many throws. I'm like, how did you miss that? What are you doing? Like, and that in the NFL can turn into turnovers. College, you can get away with an incomplete pass. So I want to see him erase those, and I want to see him play against some better defenses. But there's a lot of check marks that he's put on his sheet this year that he did not have prior.
How does he play within the structure of the offense?
Not as nearly as well as doing it out of structure.
Gotcha.
And I think that he believes he's Superman and can always evade pressure. Like, he runs backwards a lot. That's something I look for in quarterback evaluation that I don't want to see you do, because it will not work in the NFL. You can't run backwards from the pass rush. Those guys are too fast. They're going to catch you. You're going to take a 16-yard loss instead of a 4-yard loss. And those are killers in the NFL. And the structured throws, those quick slants over the middle, he misses too many of them. Those are what I call layups and free throws. You don't have to be perfect, but if you want a number on it, you got to make 95% of those throws. And that's another thing we don't see Daniel Jones do. It's all, yard after catch is a quarterback stat as much as it is a wide receiver talent.
Thank you.
If you have to reach back and lose your momentum, that right there is the inch that a lot of these guys need. And Cam Ward, I see that a little bit with him as well.
What about Jalen Milroe, who was the third guy in that bucket for you?
Different
Alabama,
level,
by the way.
Alabama, yes.
Yeah,
Jalen Milroe, different level athlete. He is a mix of Lamar and Jaden Daniels when it comes to the athletic trait. He's 220 pounds. So the fear I have to this day with Jaden Daniels is he going to be able to take a lot of hits? And he's bendy and he's wiry, but he's awkward too. And at some point it's, I do think it's going to rear its ugly head at some point. He's got to change a few things about his game. Milroe is built like a running back. His speed, he was faster than Jahmyr Gibbs when they're two at Alabama. Think about that. Wow. So you're talking about a guy that it's a special, rare ability to run. And now the question is his arm talent good enough? Is his decision-making good enough? Because that will hold you back at some point. And you don't want a guy to, run first, run second, throw second, third, because you can't be a guy that's going to get hurt a lot. You don't want a quarterback that is just a runner. He has gotten better as a passer, truly. He anticipates a lot better. His deep ball accuracy is surprisingly very good, something that we liked about Jaden last year, but he's very inconsistent. And he's been put into some high leverage situations this year, and his success rate is under 50% on that. That would bother me a little bit. So I'm still kind of like on that, late first, early second, but I do think that the specialty of him running and being able to a guy like Brian Daboll likes to do with his quarterbacks in the run game. This guy could be, Daniel Jones has produced pretty well as a runner, right? This guy would multiply that by 5. He is that kind of athlete.
Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, overall, though, if we just separate the athlete, what would you say about his overall arm talent and what he could do within the structure of an offense?
I love that he's with DeBoer, the coach that coached Penix at Washington. And I do see improvement in the mental anticipation of his game. When it comes to playing within structure of the offense, his accuracy and where you want the ball at the right time is inconsistent. So it's a question mark. And to some, that might be like, okay, dude, you can't use a first round pick on him. You just can't, because you haven't seen it. And this is his second year as a starter. There is enough experience on tape, and we do see improvements, but we don't see big improvements. So if you wanted me to say, what grade does that element of his scouting report say? That's a day 2 grade right there when it comes to arm talent and within the structure of the offense.
I like it. And I'm curious, I was going to actually ask you which one of these 3 in that bucket fits Daboll the best, but I actually don't want to ask that question, because I actually believe, just from seeing all different versions of Brian Dable's offense with DeVito, with Tyrod, and then the two separate versions of the Jones offense, the 2022 and then now, that he can mold an offense to the skill set of his quarterback. So I don't really want to focus on that. I'd rather focus on the actual players. And I want to get to a fourth player that wasn't in this original bucket, who I've seen the least of. I've seen and I'm intrigued by the most only because I've seen the least of him. And I'm just praying that I can get somebody that I have a conviction on, like I had with the guys in last year's class. Not sure we'll get there. Hopefully it's Shedeur Sanders. So what holds him back from being in that bucket with those three for you?
Shedeur?
Yes.
Part of it's going to be some of the baggage that is going to come with drafting him. And he's not a bad kid. He doesn't get arrested. And I don't want to act like I know about the inner workings. There's undoubtedly going to be baggage. And when I say I listen to interviews, that is a part of my evaluation process. Not everyone agrees with that, but I've talked to Lance Zierlein from NFL.com about that. To me, personally, that's a real thing. My process doesn't need to match everyone else's. Him throwing his offensive line under the bus when he had a bad game early in the year, that bothers me. And the fact that his dad's been his coach since high school, that bothers me. You know, like what circus is going to come to the NFL with this kid? But you don't want to let that weigh too much into the process right now. I don't trust him versus pressure. Now he's tough. He's Daniel Jones tough. Like he will take hits and get right back up. But there are times on tape, especially the last one I just watched against Cincinnati, there's pressure coming right at him and right in front of him, and he doesn't see it. It's really a few like really weird plays, and this has popped up a few times. I keep track of. I have notes on these guys for going over 2 years, and he doesn't have as much urgency and pocket awareness as I think he should have. And he gets a lot of allowance from the public on, oh, his offensive line is so bad. And it is pretty bad. It was worse last year than it is this year. But when they say quarterback sacks are somewhat a quarterback stat, that is his sack rate is higher than everyone by a country mile. And that's partially on him. And I wish we had seen a little bit more progress from him under pressure. And I personally like quarterbacks that have like a really quick trigger. That's partially why I like Jaden. He just knows how to get it out quick. There's a twitch to not only their ability to run, but their ability to get the ball out. Shedeur is almost too smooth for his own good, to the point where he wants to be smooth more than urgent. And I don't know if I would really think that translates as well to the next level.
I love that take, because I think you nailed it when it comes to Jaden, who, again, do want to give you credit for, though it's too early for victory laps, was size #1 quarterback on the board. But to me, it's how fast and effortless that release is. That makes such a difference. The ball gets out on time. The receivers can get it in stride. The pressure doesn't get there. It's like everything for these quarterbacks at times. And I feel like the Giants for the last 6 years have had a really slow delivering quarterback over the top. Takes him so long to get into his drop and to get the ball out. And so I'm looking for that kind of quarterback if we can get one.
I think you're going to like Nussmeier the more you watch him. I'm hoping. I shouldn't say I'm hoping, because I don't really care who ends up as quarterback one. I'm just saying right now I think he should be the guy. But Sanders does put the ball where he needs to put it. When he gets it out, he makes a lot of high-level throws. So there's a glimmer of hope for him. I would like to see him elevate that part of his game a little bit more.
Is there anyone else that we haven't talked about outside of those four that could potentially creep into the mix as somebody you might see the Giants liking?
Not in round one. I don't. You know, Carson Beck is, I mean, he's had an awful year. I mean, he's got 8 interceptions in the last 3 games. And you're talking.
Nick and I just watched him last week together. It was a struggle to watch him play football.
Dude, he has went back. I don't know what happened there. His tape was actually pretty impressive last year, but I do remember writing notes. He threw a lot of like really short passes, and guys doing like Ladin Conkey and Brock Bowers did so much after the catch for him last year. The running game did a ton for him that he just has not. He's throwing literally right to the defense in certain looks. Like he has no idea what he's looking at. So I'm not really sure. I do think there's a guy that the Giants will not look to, but I want to put this out there now. Quinn Ewers is a guy that I love to watch play football. He's just so smooth with the ball, and his ball fakes to different release points, but he's a guy that makes every easy throw, but he almost never makes a high level throw. And you know, you should be careful hating on that, because if he gets put in like a Shanahan system, if he gets hooked up with the right coach, that will be a Brock Purdy type situation. The biggest issue with him on my sheet right now is the durability. He's been hurt every year, and he's not a big dude. So that's something that, and he's I think he weighs under 200 pounds. You don't see quarterbacks weighing under 200. but that's something about his game, like the play fakes, the pro traits of that Texas offense will translate to a Shanahan. Like, I do think about Brock Purdy a little bit when I watch Quinn Ewers play, that I think a lot of people are going to overlook him. But just like Purdy, if he gets put into the right situation, there's things that he can do that no other guys can do at his level. But the other elements of the position, he's not a first-round pick. I don't think Giants should even go in that direction. I'm sure as we get closer to the draft, we'll start talking about some who are the day 2 options if they don't want to go quarterback, or if none of these guys rise to the occasion, or worst case scenario, they win 4 more games, they're picking 14th, and they're not even in the running for the top 3 guys, because there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And the Giants need to be on the right side of them to really have a real shot.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to touch on. We got a few more minutes left. I want to talk, and we'll do other positions at another time. And just for those, I know people wanted to hear about corners, IDL, a lot of these other spots the Giants certainly need.
There's not a lot of good news on corners. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, great. Just what we wanted to hear. But another time. But you mentioned something earlier, Cy, where you said you're almost really confident the Giants will take a quarterback in this draft. So now, with that said, I'm getting a little bit of vibes back to 2019, where the Giants essentially, in my mind at least, the GM said, I'm getting a quarterback no matter what in this class. He was locked in on Herbert. We got very unlucky, I guess you can call it, that he returned to school. I think my life, your life, Nick's life would be a lot different right now if he didn't return to school. I know I'd be a happier person. I know that for sure. And I know there's Herbert haters out there, but I don't really stand by them at all.
Take that guy in a heartbeat.
If you watch the tape this year, he's been playing phenomenal football with no receivers to work with. But it felt like they sold themselves that I need to get a quarterback, and then they kind of sold themselves on Jones. Okay.
Yep.
If what you're saying is true, it sort of sounds to me like they're repeating that exact same process this year. Do you stand by that, or where are you at with that?
That is a great question, Dan. As long as you're okay with me having the possibility to change my answer in 3-4 months when we get there, I believe that the 3 quarterbacks that I talked about give the Giants a better shot at winning games. They're also going to be significantly than Daniel Jones, both next year and down the road. I also think economically it's going to open up spending possibilities for those 3 to 4 years. And I also think that Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka, a reason why I would like to see them come back and develop the quarterback is sometimes it does take us making mistakes in our work, in our lives, to say, and have the humility to look at it and be like, all right, we need to change how we did a few things, right? Like, let's be able to, like, that whole fresh slate, fresh start, that gets a lot of people motivated to be like, all right, I'm going to do it different this time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make this mistake again. I'm not going to make the mistake, but I'm going to try this. That's why I feel better about this coaching staff, this front office getting a shot at bringing in one of these quarterbacks and trying to run it for 2 years, unless it completely blows up in year 1 and there's more drama. I believe in the base of this team. I still do. And I'm not looking at it through blue glasses. I've been as critical on this team for years as much as anyone.
Yes.
I do feel differently than I did back when Joe Judge was the head coach, for example, with Dave Gettleman. I do. I think it's a more modern approach, more realistic approach to how to build a roster. And like I said, I think there's more base talent on this team. But the clock is ticking. Dexter Lawrence is not going to be Dexter Lawrence for another 5 years from now. Andrew Thomas, not his first lower body injury. The clock is ticking on this team. And that's why you have to, no doubt, go into the draft and say, we're going to take one of these quarterbacks, even if now this is going to be a question that we'll circle back to, I'm sure, based when we know where they're drafting. Should you go into it with that much urgency to the point where you would trade up? And, what would you trade to get one of these guys? Joe Schoen was on the staff that traded up for Josh Allen. I think they used their left tackle, Cordy Glenn, if I remember, trading up with the Cincinnati Bengals. Would he trade one of their best assets to go up and get one of these quarterbacks if A, you had the grade, and B, they need to leapfrog someone? And because if you don't, you're just going to be in a hamster wheel. And so I do feel I can see the correlation between Daniel Jones. The problem was Daniel Jones was a second-round quarterback.
Yes.
I don't feel that's going to be the case with at least 2 of those 3 names that I threw out there. I think one of those guys will rise to the occasion.
Okay.
With that said, let's lose on Sunday to Carolina. No,
it's a weird thing to watch. It's like a weird, like,
tough.
am I rooting for them or not? Like, I don't think anyone should be upset if they lose, but this team's going to try to win. I think Brian Daboll, their job might be on the line. I don't have any inside information, but it might very well be.
You can't just lose out. You can't just lose 11 games in a row and expect to keep your job.
You'll probably lose your job. And now, then we start another head coaching search, and maybe Ben Johnson comes in from Detroit.
Ben Johnson is not coming here. I got to be honest with Giants fans. If you're Ben Johnson, you're going to go work with Caleb Williams over working with
absolutely
quarterbacks in this class. Just
100%.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation the Giants find themselves inside. I get even more radical with it. I am willing to take a quarterback in this class with the idea in mind that I don't necessarily believe they're at that Jaden level, and that's the level that's only the real level I care about. I don't really like going to the next level personally. But my thing is, if they lose a lot of games then with that quarterback next year, F it. If I see a quarterback like Jaden in the next class, I'll do it again. I don't care about losing that 20. We've already lost so many first round assets with Neal and all that. Like, it's not going to kill us. What we need is this quarterback to help.
So that's like what Arizona did, right? Josh Rosen, the next year they took Kyler Murray. F it. From that perspective, it worked out for them for sure.
Yeah. And look, it is what it is. It's a tough spot. The Giants had that opportunity, by the way, in 2020. They didn't take it, but it was tough. Daniel Jones, I understand, was coming off a pretty good rookie year somewhat to some extent.
If you draft a quarterback next year, Dan, you get to make the call, and you draft one of these guys and you like him. Do you keep Daniel Jones around at all to let him start the season, maybe even play the year or most of the year and beef up some trade value? Or you just say, hey, cut it loose, go sign somewhere else. We'll take the financial loss.
Oh, I like being put on the spot in this interview with you, Zach. Well, I don't think this will be a surprise to any of our listeners, but there's not a chance I would keep Daniel Jones on this roster. I believe that not only would there be better options for the 17 million, I could sign someone for 8-9 million that I personally think has a chance to be as good, if not better than Jones, while also using that 8-9 million for a corner or for something else. And I think they need to get rid of this. I think the chapter needs to be over at this point with him and let him go somewhere else and let him have his opportunity. Maybe it'll be Carolina. I think that's certainly a possibility. Right. And I wish him the best. Like, if he finds a way to become a good quarterback with another team, and it was our fault the whole time, I'm happy for him. Like, because you know why? It's something we talked about earlier. We're questioning, does Deontay Banks want to be the best corner in the NFL? Does Evan Neal want to be the best right tackle? We know Daniel Jones wants to be the best quarterback in the entire NFL. First one in, first one out. He brings that baseline that we're hoping the entire team can bring. It's just all the other stuff that we don't really believe that he brings to the table that makes it difficult. And unfortunately, that is only a baseline.
Let me put Nick on the spot. Ask you.
Oh, yeah. So same question?
No, different question.
Oh, let's do it.
Here we go. If the Giants let go of Jones, they're not in the running. They feel like they're not in the running, or they don't have a grade on one of these quarterbacks. Sam Darnold's available. Do you sign him?
Yeah, for what? Like around 10 mil?
No. If he continues to play well and gets the team playoffs, he'll get a $30 to $40 million a year per contract.
Probably not. I think we're in that situation. We're looking for, like, hey, this is basically a punt year, which I don't think they'll ever be able to sell to Mara and sell to ownership. But at that point, I don't want to do this musical quarterback. And it really would depend. I would have to probably go through the all-22 and watch Sam Darnold. Yeah, I am not opposed to doing the Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield type of rebuild, if you will. I just don't know if I would want to do that for like a 1 year type of thing. Exactly. I would have to be fully bought in. Right. So I'm not opposed to the idea, but I would really need a lot of all-22 to reassure me that is the guy.
Because the goal there would be, Tampa Bay took a 1 year flyer on Baker Mayfield. Now he's crushing it. Liam Cohen's a coach that's doing a great job over there. They're still playing well with the receivers dropping like flies, and Sterling Shepard being one of them. But Geno Smith in Seattle, love him or hate him. He turned things around and helped that team be a playoff contender. But to me, if you go down that Sam Darnold train, you're basically trying to get to 9-8. And you're spending a lot of money. Yep. So I'd rather risk it on a rookie and try to develop him the right way and build up the roster the way Dave Gettleman did not.
Yeah, I think you're better off in that situation doing what the Bucs did rather than what the Giants would be doing by signing Don. Right, the Bucs took that 1 year flyer at the low price. They bought low. Yeah, now they're building around him. And man, Baker on Monday Night Football, the fact that he was able to take them down against the Spags defense. That's pretty much at full health with no receivers on the field that he's worked with at all was wildly impressive to me. I'm very impressed by everything.
He's been good this year.
It's been very good this year, which I didn't really see coming. But I'd rather do that almost. And I don't know if there are going to be any opportunities to do that. What quarterback with that build? There might be, though. We haven't looked into it just yet. But yeah, it'll be interesting, Si. We're at the same. It's like Groundhog Day with Giants fans. We recycle. We get back to this part of the cycle. Yep. Hopefully, there's an end in sight, like a light at the end of this tunnel. I hope so. Eventually, there will be. But thank you so much for taking the time today. Before you go, let the listeners know where they can find all your work and how they can follow your work and support his work. Please support his work.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was fun. It's fun. It's funny how quick an hour goes talking to you guys. At X on Twitter, at Ourlads _Sy. That's SY. Ourlads started a YouTube channel last year. We're still trying to get our feet under us there, trying to figure some things out. But we do put out content, and Ourlads has a new insider. I know we're all known for our depth charts, but we've now had communication with some teams and some media people. Now we have the ticker, the NFL transaction ticker, and you can sign up for this, the Ourlads Insider, that you get inside access to that, and you get to visit the website ad-free, which I know is a big deal because the ads are pretty annoying.
It is.
And it's just $1 fee per year. It's on the cheap side. You get a draft guide with it on discount if you want. So give that a look. We're trying to build that up right now. The Ourlads Insider, very, very economic deal. And I think you'll have a much more enjoyable experience if you use that website.
Love it. Thank you again for joining us on the show. We'd love to talk to you anytime about ball. It is a lot of fun always.
Let's do it, guys.
And I'll leave it on that as go Giants. And for everybody else listening in, please like and subscribe to this. If you're watching now, hit the like button. Let's get this video juiced up. We know, look, Nick and I took a look at the numbers this morning. We didn't love the return on our all 22 film for the offense and the defense. We're not questioning why. We get it. It's hard to watch tape of this team right now, but this is the stuff we want. This is what you've been asking us for months, and we're delivering it right here. And we've got one of the best analysts in the game doing it. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening, but please hit the like and subscribe button. For everybody else, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.